Hey, what do you know? This is the Melbourne Live Show, and thank you everyone for joining me here today. Today, well, I would just like to kind of set the context here because today we're going to be talking about a really difficult topic. And I say it's difficult because many of us, I think, at some point in time, we have experienced this thing. However, some of us, stand up to it and deal with it then. But there are a few of us who perhaps either ignore the signs or we simply think that we are able to pull this through. And so as a result that we might have not been successful in that endeavor. And as a result that it has spun off into a totally different animal. So today the topic that I want to talk about it's burnout, right? And as I say, many of us, I think at some point in time in our career, we would have experienced or even suffered from burnout. Now, so today I want to share with you what are the 5 stages of burnout and also what are some of the things that you can do to manage that burnout. And so, few things here. One is for you to be able to identify at which stage you are at, and of course, how you're going to address that. Now, before I proceed, just would like to state a disclaimer that this is by no means a substitute for professional medical advice. And so, if you think you're suffering from burnout and you need help, please go out there and seek professional advice. With that said, well, when starting a one person, 1 million or digital business, and especially when it comes to entrepreneurship, being an entrepreneur can really be very, very lonely. And what I mean by that, it's simply this, right? Because, especially with a one person business itself, we may not have someone to kind of spar our ideas with. We may not have someone to kind of listen to us or someone to even sometime give us that emotional or psychological boost, right? And so some of us kind of just envelop ourselves within that scenario itself. And sometimes we may have a good friend, or sometimes some of us are blessed enough, like myself, to have a great spouse who is understanding and who is able to see the bigger picture and at the same time to be able to encourage me to push on, right? And so burnout is something that it's absolutely real and there is no shame in it because I think, like I said, all of us at some point in time, we have experienced or suffered from burnout. So the key question here really is how do we deal with that? Right? So there are essentially five stages of burnout itself. So, what are those key stages? The first stage of burnout, and I think everyone kind of experienced that at some point in time, and this is what they call the honeymoon period. Now, the honeymoon period essentially it's when you start working on a new job or you start taking on a project or you kind of start transiting into a life of an entrepreneur. This is time where you are so excited or you're so enthusiastic about the work itself that you would actually, invest more time than usual into this piece of work. And at the onset of this, you may even say, like, for example, well, I'm passionate about what I'm doing. And so, each and every waking hour, I am thinking, I am working, I am just doing whatever I can to build up this business itself. And that's fine and good. But this is the first step of leading towards a burnout, right? So this is stage one. Now, stage one really it's good in a sense that you will say that, well, I'm taking responsibility for the kind of work that I'm doing, and I want to be investing my time, energy, body, and soul into this piece of work, right? Well, and we can't make up excuses and say that, well, because I'm passionate about it, because this is my baby, and so I'm putting it all this amount of energy and work into this whole thing. Well, but like I said, this is the onset of things to come, right? And so if you do not kind of manage this first stage well, we'll talk about how you can manage that with three simple things to do. Simple, but not easy, right? If you do not deal with that at the first stage, this is where you will spin into stage two. Now, stage two essentially is what they call the onset of stress. Now, the onset of stress is where this is the time where you start to put in the work. And at the initial phase, like I said, you have a lot of enthusiasm, you have a lot of high hopes, and you think that everything you plan is just going to work out. I mean, that's how it is for most of us, right? But you will come to a stage whereby you will run against some difficulties, you will run up against some challenges, um, things don't go as fast as you want it to be, or the kind of strategies that everybody say that it's working for them, somehow it's just not working for you. And and this is where you start getting a little anxious and you start getting a little antsy about things. And this is the onset of stress itself, right? So this is the time where you find yourself a lot, anxiety is a bit more. You get frustrated, you get angry, you get irritated with why you are not meeting those goals itself, right? And so that is stage two. Now, then when you go to stage three, this is where the onset of stress becomes, you know, stress in a more continuous fashion, right? Which means you're not feeling stress from time to time. You are like feeling stress every single day. And trust me, I've been there. All right. Because as an early stage.com that I was managing in 2000, every day was simply stressful. It was stressful because I had to deal with clients, I have to deal with investor, I have to deal with the founder, I have to deal with the employees, the partners. There was just so much stress that was going on that it's just unimaginable, right? And I knew that at that point in time, I could give it all up and kind of quit, so to speak, and then see myself as a quitter or as a failure, or I could press on with that and see the light at the end of the tunnel itself. Well, quite frankly, it doesn't quite work that way. It's not binary. It's not like it's either you fail or you succeed, right? There is actually quite a fair bit of gray area here. And what's more important, it's Is this going to be meaningful to you? And how is this going to add value to your thinking, to your working, to your mindset, and all? Right. So this is where you kind of have that stress. You may even call this chronic stress stage 3, right? Chronic stress stage. This is where you are stressed up every day, you are anxious every day, and someday you might even deal with that level of anxiety that you just couldn't get yourself out of bed, or you just couldn't get yourself in front of the computer to do the work because the thought of what might come and what could come is just totally overwhelming. So, like I said, when I was managing the earlystage.com itself, after the what we call the honeymoon period, right, I was starting to feel that, oh no, today I would have to make sure that I make all these calls to the clients. And then I would also have clients, wanting to see me, wanting to sort some of these things out. At the same time, I have to deal with the founder. At the same time, I have to deal with the people who are working at the office. And I have to chase for payments, and then there is this issue with investors and partners. It was you know on a everyday basis, and it starts the moment I step into the office, and quite sadly it doesn't end until I lay my head down to sleep at night. And sometimes even in the middle of the night I would wake up in cold sweat because I would be dreaming, or I have this concern that tomorrow it's going to be a commissioning of the project for the client and everything would have screwed up. Luckily for me, nothing ever screwed up big time, right? I mean, of course, there were screw ups along the way. They're bound to have screw ups along the way, but there were no major screw up itself, right? And so that is chronic stress, if you ask me. So that's stage 3. Now, if you don't deal with the chronic stress stage, then this is where you go into stage 4, right? And stage 4 is where you actually experience the burnout. And the burnout is where you start thinking like, oh, I I think I'm not well. I think I'm gonna call in sick, or I'm gonna not um show up for work, or I am just gonna find a way to excuse myself from the investor meeting, for example. So this is the part where, in a sense, you start the self-sabotage behaviors. You say certain things, but you do not do it. And the reason why you say certain things is because it's kind of expected of you as the CEO, or as the founder, or as the person who is starting this business. Like for me, at a point in time, it was expected of me as a CEO to agree to certain things. But I know at the back of my head that it cannot be done, or it's going to take longer than what I have promised. And so the whole idea of avoidance is just so strong, right? I recall there were times where we were supposed to meet up with an investor, and I would deliberately, or at least at a subconscious level, sabotage the entire meeting just because, I am just so burnt out and I cannot cope anymore, right? And so this is stage 4, where things starts to fall apart, right? And so at this stage itself, it's very crucial that you addressed it, or you might want to get out of that situation itself, right? Because getting out doesn't mean you are a failure, right? You are a failure only if you stop. And so this is a very crucial part, because what's going to happen is when you do not address stage 4 and it goes into stage 5, this is where I would say all hell breaks loose. And this is the stage where, you plunge into depression, you plunge into that negative thought day in, day out. And of course, at the extreme level, you would even imagine that everyone is against you. Where in fact, people are just minding their own business. But you would have that idea that everyone is just against you and everyone just want to see you fail and everyone is just waiting for you to fall so that they could laugh at you or so that they could take over your business. And you go into this stage of, you know, absolute negativity, depression, and definitely, this is where you start withdrawing. So, my friends, let me share with you that in this whole process of starting this one person, 1 million all digital business, you will come through some of these stages, right? And I hope you would not go into stage 4 or even stage 5, because when you get into that stage itself, sometimes, excuse me, sometimes the damage could be so much that you may start damaging either relationship, your health, or worse still, the very people that you love the most. And so I want to quickly share with you the three things that you can do in order to make sure that you are able to deal with the situation at hand, and also to be able to handle it in such a way that you are able to reverse or manage it effectively. So the three things that I do, right? The three things that I do to manage this itself is the following. So I need to say this, right? If you are ever in stage 5, there are two possibilities. One possibility is you are totally withdrawn from the business itself. You just want to give up, and that is bad, right? Um, and this is where you really, really, please, you must seek professional help. Now, I also know that there are people who are at this stage, but they are in denial. In other words, they are saying that, well, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm able to handle all this. And they kind of think that, oh, it's no big deal. And that is where it's become really, really dangerous. So at that point in time, no, not only the business is going to be affected, the health is going to be affected, the the relationships are going to be affected, as well as the loved ones are going to be affected, right? So be very, very certain that if you ever find yourself in stage 5, please, please go ahead and make sure that you seek professional help. Now, I would even say that if you ever find yourself in stage 4, you also want to consider professional help. So, if I can give you advice, right, or I can share with you what was my strategy itself. When I reached stage 4, right, when I reached stage 4 of burnout, what I did was I immediately started to seek medical help. I seek medical professional help to kind of bring everything back to baseline. And even then, that took me like at least 6 months before I was able to reach baseline itself. Right. And so that level of anxiety, that level of burnout is just phenomenal. And this is where you really, really need to handle it professionally. So I chose to take the chemical route, which means, I went and I decided that yes, I need medication. Medication is going to help me manage this whole situation. It's going to bring me back to baseline. And then I coupled that with a psychological help. And this is where I would have to speak to a psychologist. And this is where I get strategies, I get additional tips and insights into how to manage my whole well being. So I'm glad and I'm blessed in the sense that I've never fell into stage 5, right? I was at the brink of stage 5, but I never fell into stage 5 itself, right? So for the rest of us, whether you are in if you're in stage 2 and you're in stage 3, for example, right? The three best things that you want to do on a regular basis, and if you can't afford it, on a daily basis, these are the three things you must do. And I call this the three B's. So, what are the three B's? Number one is very simple. Number one is breathe. And you might be like, what is that? Right? I mean, how does that help? Now, breathe is not just about breathing, right? You can see breathing in terms of meditation. You can also see breathing as a form of exercise. So what I did was I make sure that every day I get a good workout, right? And a good workout for me would be, either a good swim of about 20 to 30 laps, depending on time. A good run anywhere between 3 to 6 kilometers, again depending on time. I would want to clock that in on a daily basis. Have I missed them? Of course I have, right? But the point is that I make it such a point whereby it becomes a daily routine and it becomes a daily habit. Once it becomes a daily habit itself, you no longer have to debate with yourself, should I run today or not? Or should I work out today or not? No, you just wake up and at a certain point in time or a certain time of the day, you just go and do your workout as if, like, when you wake up, you would do a certain thing. Like for some people would be they would go to the bathroom, they will brush their teeth. For others would be, they would grab a big glass of water. Speaking of that, let me just grab a drink of water. Mm-mm. So breathe. That is really, really important. So, just today, I was listening to a podcast episode of Tim Ferriss interviewing Dan Harris, if I'm not mistaken. And he was talking about meditation. And he was saying that, ideally, you should be meditating at least 1 hour a day. Now, but before you freaked out, he was saying that this 1 hour doesn't have to be on a single stretch itself. You can do this 1 hour, like, in the morning, first 5 minutes, and then 2 minutes in between, 1 minute here, 10 minutes there, the kind of thing. Right. And so the key idea is that throughout the entire day, you want to, little it with, short or sometimes perhaps a little bit lengthier bouts of meditation. So meditation doesn't mean that you just have to sit. It can be a walking meditation. It can be a meditation just watching certain things. You know, all those are meditation itself. But the key point here is that we want to breathe because we want to bring in the amount of oxygen into our body. And with that itself, it rejuvenates our cell and makes us a lot more alert, right? And so that is one of the reasons why, I have stopped exercising or I stop my workout late in the night because after that I'll be wide awake and I can't sleep. Right. So the first B is breathe. Now, the second B is very, very important. And I know many of you are going to protest to this second B, right? And for good reason, because you are, a workaholic, so to speak. You see yourself that, this thing I'm starting, so I got to be working on it like, 24/7. Now, I understand that, right? Because I've been through that stage as well. And I understand this is the business that you are building. But you also need to set what we call boundaries. So, boundaries are very simple. Boundaries, which means it just says that, all right, at a certain time of the day, I'm going to put down all my work. no matter what I'm doing, I'm just going to put it down and I am going to do blank. So doing blank could be, I would play with my kids. So, like for example, right, especially during COVID-19 lockdown here in Singapore, um, my boundaries were very, very simple. In the morning, my boundaries was I set a boundary whereby I would devote at least 1 to 2 hours working with the kids on then home-based learning. And that's because, initially when they started home-based learning and I was trying to do my work, I was continuously getting interrupted. And so at the initial stage, I was really, really annoyed because I was like, oh man, can't you just sort this out by yourself? But after that, I thought, you know, let's hope that this is going to be the only time in our life that we go going to be experiencing a lockdown. And so I told myself, let's make the best out of this. And so I said, well, since this is the situation that it presents me, perhaps I can be flexible. And so instead of working in the morning, what I did was I work in the afternoon because by late morning, they would have done with their home based learning. And so in the morning, I set a boundary that I would just invest 1 to 2 hours working with them on their home based learning so that, I am okay if they are interrupting me because I'm just like clearing my emails. I'm not doing, heavy lifting work, for example. So setting boundaries. So boundaries could be, I will work within this time and this time, right? I mean, especially these days where you have to work across different time zone, it's just sometimes difficult to have that kind of boundary. And I understand that. But what you really want to do is you want to set aside boundaries. So for instance, I have seen friends, right? I've seen friends who worked every day, right? Every day. And so, it comes to a point whereby they either have a strained relationship with their spouse or with their kids. And that's painful, right? And you understand that, yes, these people want to provide for the family, but, as they work towards that, some things it got to give. And so, you never want to be in that situation, or you want to avoid being in that situation. At least that's what I want to say, right? Um, and I want to preface this by saying that I'm not judging, right? It's just unfortunate that some of these people have to do this. And I'm just glad I'm blessed in the sense that I'm able to choose this, right? I'm able to choose my timing. So setting boundaries it's something that it's really, really important. So at the initial stage, I had no boundaries, right? I would work whenever someone wants me to work. And then at some point in time, you kind of realize that, hey, there's more to life than just working. And sometimes saying no is the smarter thing to do. So it could be saying no to another person, or it could be saying no to a client because it's a weekend, or no to a client because it's a special day that you have to be there. You want to be there with your kids, right? Like for example, this weekend, I want to be there with my kid to celebrate, to support him in his sailing regatta, right? And so that's something that's a kind of boundaries that you want to set for yourself. Now, like I say, as I understand, not all of us have and it's able to set the kind of boundaries, right? But in as far as you can, that's why we're working towards LIFT freedom. So it's the second B. The third B, it's breaks. Now, come on. We are not machines, right? And so at some point in time, when you work, you will need some kind of break. So the break could be, as simple as like the Pomodoro timer, right? You work for 20 minutes at a row, and then you break for 5 minutes, and then 20 minutes, and then 5 minutes. That could be a break. Or a break could be, within this week itself, I'm going to take one day off and I'm going to devote doing this. right? It doesn't have to be with family, it could be with your friends, or it can be just for yourself. And so this is something that you really want to do in terms of managing stage two and stage three itself. Right? I certainly hope that this has been helpful. Let me know in the comments below what um, if you found this to be helpful. Please give me a thumbs up because that would help other people find and discover this video. And if you want more topics like this on how to manage either yourself or your business or your revenue when you're building this one person, 1 million all digital business, then make sure you subscribe to the channel itself. All right. And so if you, which stage are you at? If you are too shy to put it in the comments, please feel free to send me an email and let me know. And perhaps we could talk about that. Right. And so with that, I thank you so much for watching. And guys, right, there is always a way to deal with this. All right. Be kind to yourself. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.